Start spreading the news. We're going to cap the Belmont Stakes Day card here, race 1 through 13.
Today's video is brought to you by Assiniboine Downs Gaming and Event Center. And be sure to tune in to Trust the Profits Live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern for Monday Night Lights, hosted by Matthew DeSantis.
Salutations and welcome, friends. I'm your host of this very special episode of Capping the Card. My name is Matthew DeSantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle at Failed to Menace. Welcome to this very special edition of Capping the Card, where we are going to go race 1 through 13 and give you a top pick and top value play for every single race on the Belmont Stakes Day card. Okay, we got you covered for the whole card. It's a very contentious one. A lot of big races, a lot of big names, a lot of big favorites, but a lot of value opportunities as well. Now, before we get into the video, just a quick reminder, press that subscribe button here on Trust the Profits to get all of our great content, from live betting on Mondays and Thursday evenings to handicapping shows like this one to horse racing shows like the Win Play Show. We have something for every type of horse racing fan. So again, press that subscribe button. Like this video below and let me know your best bet of the day. Let me know where you're going. Out of all the races on the card, what do you feel most confident about? What's a big long shot you really like, or a heavy favorite that you just are going to single in your sequences? Let me know what your best bet of the day is. Always like hearing from you, hearing from different opinions. Now, before we dive into this, obviously we have to address the elephant in the room, which is the weather conditions in New York. Obviously, the weather itself is fine. The problem is, of course, the Canadian wildfire smoke that has inundated much of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. I'm here in Virginia, and it's certainly notable here as well. But it does seem as if Saturday should be okay. Now, as I'm recording this on Thursday night, air quality has gotten better over the last 24 hours in New York. They're calling for it to continue to improve overnight and into tomorrow. They're also calling for some potential showers on Friday. That should clear things out for Saturday. Obviously, Belmont did cancel Thursday's card. Friday's card, I would say, is still very much so in limbo. We will see what ends up happening. Obviously, we'll see what happens overnight, but that is something to keep an eye on. I do think Saturday is okay. Listen, the show must go on, and we are going to cap this card one way or the other. And so we'll just dive right in and get into race number 1, which is a $90,000 maiden special weight going 6 furlongs on the turf for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares. And this is interesting because as I was preparing this, I've been following Belmont this whole meet, and I've been particularly capping the Saturday cards. And I went back and double checked, and indeed, the heavy favorite has won 4 of the 5 race number 1s on the Saturdays at Belmont. So since the meet started at Belmont, race 1 has been won 80% of the time by the heavy favorite, and often in laughable fashion, they just open up and win with ease. Now, I'm not saying that's always going to hold true, but it is just an interesting dynamic that I've noted. I ultimately did go with the favorite here as my top selection in race number 1. Love to Shop, 5-2 in the morning line for Todd Pletcher. Now, it is notable that Irad Ortiz Jr. jumps off of this ride and goes to the Chad Brown horse in this particular race. And so moves to accept the outcome, the number 5 horse. My issue here is that horse, I do pay a lot of attention to Irad. Obviously, he and Chad together are winning at a 41% clip at Belmont. I mean, are you kidding me? This is insane. Now, 41%, 266 ROI, obviously very good. That horse, though, I went back and watched that April 15th race, which was the last time this horse ran. That horse had the perfect setup. Stalked a moderate pace and was sitting right off the hip of the leading horse in the lead, turned for home and just didn't have an extra gear, didn't have anything else. So I'm a little hesitant knowing that this horse is probably going to take a lot of money because it's Chad Brown and Irad Ortiz Jr. So again, I went to the outside with Todd Pletcher's runner, who took a long layoff, debuted in August at Saratoga on the dirt, then comes back May in 2023. So you're looking an August to May layoff. This horse goes 7 furlongs on the turf at this level, finishes a really strong second while displaying a very strong closing kick. Pletcher's always good second back from the layoff, 31%. Gaffleone, I always trust on the turf in particular. Like this horse a lot. I think this is a good one here to get things started in terms of a favorite who I really like. Now, in terms of value, I'm really intrigued by this number 2 horse, Get Respect, 8-1 for Barkley Tag. This is a horse coming off a long layoff, gets Dylan Davis aboard. But this is a horse that's run some decent races, actually, going back to last year. And again, hasn't run since last summer. It made its debut in May at Belmont, then ran in June at Belmont, in July in Saratoga, and was routing in those races, going a mile and a 16th, and displayed a lot of speed in those second 2 races, in the June and July races at Belmont and Saratoga. But you could tell just didn't have the endurance to take it all the way going a mile and a 16th or a mile up at Saratoga. Therefore, now Barkley Tag brings this horse back from a long layoff, puts the blinkers on, and shortens this horse up. It's a little bit of a makeover package. And I usually am a sucker for that if you can get it at a good price. And I think you can, because I think a lot of money is going to go to the Pletcher and Brown horses here. So I think this horse might just have the chance to take him gate to wire. It would not shock me if this horse was able to get the slip and was able just to use that speed and go and, get the win here. So 8-1 on the morning line, I think might even float up a little bit more. Dylan Davis seems to be getting a little bit more aggressive now as this meet has gone on. There's a little bit to like there for me in race number 1 for Get Respect. Well, let's move to race number 2 on the card, which is another 7 furlong race going on the turf, which is an $80,000 allowance race for 3-year-old and up. And this is a state restricted race. And for this one, I'm going to go with the top pick, which is a Mike Maker horse, the number 2 Solib at 4-1 with Manny Franco aboard. Listen, this horse ran a huge race last time out and won an allowance, a starter allowance, 50,000 last time, going 7 furlongs over the Belmont turf. Listen, 7 furlongs is a unique distance, and I always give preference to horses that have won going that distance and have had success going that distance. And like I said, 7 furlongs is just a little bit of a funky distance. Those horses that like to go 6.5 can't get 7 sometimes. Those milers don't always cut back to 7 very effectively. So again, 7 furlongs is one of those distances that is very unique, I feel like, in horse racing. And so always pay attention to that. I like to see the success there over the same turf. Listen, this was a horse that was hurdling 3 starts back at Fair Hills for Kerry Bryan and went to the Maker barn. And usually when we see this from Mike Maker, we see these horses stretch out. Maker did the opposite, shortened this horse up a little bit, and the horse showed a new dimension. You look at what this horse was doing, routing on the flats before going to hurdling. This horse was a pace horse on the lead all the time. What does Maker do? Lets this horse take back a little bit more. Just ease into it. Don't get too excited. Stay, towards the back of the pack, then make a big run late. That's exactly what Manny Franco did last time out. And the thing is, that 83 Beyer speed figure, listen, is more than enough to win this field. And when you go back and look, and I know sometimes when you see that kind of anomalous speed figure on somebody's PPs, it's tempting to go back and say, is that a real speed figure? What's interesting is I went back and looked at that race, and the speed figures assigned to all of the other horses in that race are exactly in line with what they have been doing throughout their careers. So it makes me think that 83 speed figure that Solib got last time out is very accurate. Now, can he replicate it? I think he can. Second back from a huge layoff. I like this one for Mike Maker, who's obviously very hot up there at New York, winning 25% of his races. And I like Manny in this spot. I think this is a horse that obviously he gave this exact type of ride last time out. So I think he can get it again. Now, from a value standpoint, I do like the number 6, Lisa's Vision, at 8-1 for Jorge Abreu with Flavian Pratt aboard. This is interesting. This is the horse that Manny Franco was on and is obviously choosing to ride the number 2, which should probably tell you kind of Manny's preference between these two horses. But I still think you can get some nice value here with Lisa's Vision, even if it's just attacking this race vertically. Again, this isn't a one that won over the turf at this distance. You cannot put enough emphasis on that. Actually broke her maiden going over the turf at 7 furlongs. Second back from a layoff, and really has turned in a series of very honest efforts at this level, going back to the Belmont and Aqueduct meet last year when they were on the turf. turned in 2 consecutive second place finishes at this level, now goes to the bench from October until April, comes back, clearly needs one. I mean, even the notes in the past performances say no kick. That's exactly what you would expect from a horse that needs one off the bench. Now you're getting second back from the layoff. I think this horse, you get, Flavian Pratt aboard. No disrespect to Manny, who I like on the winner, actually. Here are my top choice. But I'm just saying, I think this is a horse that can give you a lot of value. And, Pratt, I think, is going to be able to give you a good ride. I think he's in for a pretty big day on Saturday along with Irad. But that's not breaking news. Those are two of the best jockeys that we have out there in that New York colony. So that's where I'm kind of looking for value underneath in race number 2. Although I'll say, I wouldn't be shocked if a horse like You Should Be Dancing for Reed Rodriguez with Jose Ortiz aboard. I wouldn't be shocked if that horse runs a big race as well. That third back in the form cycle, that horse might be sitting on a little something. I'm going to try to get around the other Jorge Abreu horse with Irad Ortiz Jr. aboard, Weekend Rags. That's one's coming back from a little bit of a layoff. And while the speed figure was fine last time out, it's not so overwhelming that I'm going to take those really short odds on a horse jockey by Irad. Let's go to race number 3, which is the first of the multitude of graded stakes races on the card. And this is, of course, the True North Stakes. And this is going 6.5 furlongs for 4-year-olds and up. And I'm going to use the chalk here in terms of Elite Power. This is one that I think some people are going to probably single or you're going to try to beat. I don't know if I have as much confidence in this favorite as I do some other favorites later in the card. And to be honest, I can't say that there's an overwhelming favorite that I have a huge amount of confidence on this card. But I think Elite Power is obviously a really, really good horse. I mean, this is one that's won now 6 in a row. And, ever since breaking this horse's maiden has been on an absolute roll, has won, a maiden allowance company, optional claimer 62, then goes and wins the grade 2 Vosburg, wins the grade 1 Breeders' Cup sprint, then goes overseas and wins the Riyadh Dirt Sprint as well over Gunite, who we just saw absolutely obliterate a field last weekend at Churchill Downs. So, he came back and ran beautifully after that. You get Belmont, who I think is in for a big day. Irad is up on the mount. I'm going to use those two together, even though historically they don't really have a very high hit rate, only a 6% win rate. And actually winning that BC sprint was the only time I think they connected as a winner in 2022. So it is notable. I think some people are going to want to go to Strobe, the number 5 horse, but listen, I understand the speed figures are good and that horse hasn't done anything wrong, has never finished out of the exacta. I will say, I don't know how good that horse really is, though. I mean, got beat by Skelly last time out. Granted, that was off the layoff. And Skelly's a very nice horse at Oaklawn Park, but let's not turn Skelly into the second coming of Jackie's Warrior. I mean, Skelly's won a bunch of listed stakes in grade 3 races, hasn't really gone and stepped into the deep end of the pool, and hasn't really won anywhere other than Oaklawn Park. So, I don't know how great Skelly is necessarily. And then also, Tejano Twist finished 3rd, which is what Tejano Twist always seems to do whenever he runs. So, I don't know if I'm all the way in on Strobe, and you're probably not going to get a very good price on Strobe either, only 2-1 on the morning line. Therefore, my value play in this one is the horse that might just get the jump on the field, which is today's Flavor on the inside rail, and another Manny Franco horse for George Weaver. Listen, this horse has ascending speed figures. Looks like this horse is keep getting better. Ran, I thought, a very strong 4th place, I should say, in the grade 1 Carter handicap against Doppelganger and Repo Rocks and Expressman. That was a really big race. And this horse has won, granted, you could say, well, he's been running against, State Bred Company. He won an open company allowance race. And like I said, held his own in that grade 1 Carter handicap. Has a ton of speed from the inside rail. I think he's the speed of the speed. I know he can do the distance because he can win at 7 furlongs. He can win at 6.5. I think this is a horse that likes this and can just get out there and go. I wouldn't be surprised if he just gets out there and maybe gives the field the slip. It wouldn't shock me if he could take them gate to wire, depending on how the track is playing at Belmont on Saturday. But like I said, I ultimately did go with Elite Power up top. But I think if you're going to try to find some value, today's Flavor makes a lot more sense as a horse to beat Elite Power than I think Strobe does. You're going to get much better value with the number 1 horse than you will with Strobe. And even if you, and I think it just makes sense to play underneath too. Let's move to race number 4 on the card, which is your last non-graded stakes until the bailout race, actually. So the rest of them are all graded stakes after this one until race 13. But this is a $95,000 allowance going 7 furlongs for a 3-year-old and up. And you're not seeing double here, folks. Indeed, my top pick is my value play in this one, just because my top pick is the number 9, Looney Sema, at 8-1 on the morning line. And there weren't any horses that I liked at a higher price than that. So ultimately, that ended up being both my top pick and value play. Listen, the number 7 horse Life Changer might win this race. And what I'll say about that horse is he's done absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, this is a horse that is incredibly consistent. 12 for 15 in the money career, 5 for 6 in the money at the distance with 2 wins. The problem is this horse is 15 career races, 3 wins, 5 seconds, 4 thirds. This horse runs underneath at this level in particular. The last 5 times out at this allowance, non-winners of 1 or non-winners of 2 over a certain period of time with the conditions at this level, third by 4 lengths, second by 5.5 lengths, second by a neck, third by a length and a half, second by a half a length. I mean, he's always right there, just doesn't quite get the job done. So I'm ultimately going to end up going to the number 10, Looney Sema, Peter Walder, Eric Cancel. This is a horse that I think is finally getting back to what it does best, which is sprinting. They've tried to take this horse routing a few times, going a mile and a 16th. I think this horse is best when going 6.5, 7 furlongs. This horse is 2 for 3 in the exacta at the 7 furlong distance with a win. I think this horse has very good positional speed, is a very consistent horse as well. And I just think you're getting much better value for this type of a horse. And I think, listen, last time out was, that was initially scheduled as a turf race that got taken off the turf. And I just, hard to evaluate how good that horse is based off that last effort. You look at those previous 3 efforts, this horse was absolutely trending in the right direction from a buyer speed figure standpoint and from an overall caliber standpoint. I like this horse cutting back to that 7 furlongs. I'm going to use this one as my top pick and my value play in race number 4. Well, let's go to race number 5, which, like I said, starts this onslaught of graded stakes races. In fact, gives you 8 consecutive graded stakes races on the card. And this is the Poker Stakes. And this is 1 mile on the turf for 4-year-olds and up. It's a grade 3 race. I really went back and forth on this race a lot. This is a tough one. Even though I ultimately went with Chez Pierre, I debated using Emmanuel up top as my top selection, but I just can't trust Emmanuel. I feel like every single time I want to use that horse, and I do use that horse, he just doesn't run the way that I think he's going to run. I don't think he had much of an excuse for finishing 3rd at the dinner party last time out. Maybe you go, well, he's more of a 1-turn miler, and this is actually going to be the perfect setup for him. Maybe. But if it's, it's also a thing. It's not as if Emmanuel has beaten a lot of great horses. I mean, when you go back and look at his career on the turf, I mean, he's beaten horses like Napoleonic War, Limited All Liability, Steady On, who's a decent enough horse, Fort Washington, Win From Within, Golden Alchemist. I mean, these aren't amazing horses necessarily. And so he's beaten some grade 3 company basically. But again, he's facing tougher this time, both to his outside in terms of the Mark Casse Brazilian horse, Fila de Ariana, who's at 4-1 on the morning line, who is a very good sprinter. And I'll be interested to see. My concern with her is, and him, I should say, I don't know what type of trip he's going to end up getting. And he wants to use speed, but I don't know, breaking from that 7 post with the kind of interesting configuration they have starting in the chute there for those mile turf races. I'm just not sure he gets the right type of trip. I think Chez Pierre gets the right type of trip. Even money, I know that's not great to look at, but this is a horse that just hasn't ever really done anything wrong. 6 for 7 winning lifetime. Not in the money. 6 for 7 winning lifetime, including last time out winning the grade 1 Maker's Mark Mile. Now, maybe you say he gave the field the slip in that race. You might be right, but this is a horse that was absolutely trending the right direction, came over from France and ran some huge races at Tampa and Laurel, and then went to the bench for the better part of 8 to 9 months, from April until February, basically 10 months. Comes back and runs a 6th place finish in a grade 3 race where Emmanuel wins, but that's a horse that clearly needed one off the bench, and then comes back from that race to run at the Maker's Mark Mile and runs a hole in the win, a 106 buyer speed figure. listen, if you draw a line through that Tampa Bay race, that grade 3 race coming back from the 10-month layoff, everything else makes sense for this horse. I mean, this horse was progressing and moving in the right direction. The speed figures are moving up. I, I'm going to use this horse. I feel a little bit more confident in Shea Pierre in this one than I do even in Elite Power. Now, from a value standpoint, I'm going to throw one downfield a little bit for this race, and that's Dreams of Tomorrow, 12-1 for Shug McGahee and Manny Franco. This feels like a sneaky Shug horse, and I've talked a lot about this on the show, that Shug McGahee, he's one of those trainers that it can be really tough to get a gauge on sometimes with his horses in terms of when they're going to fire. Third time back now from a layoff, so third back in the form cycle. This horse goes to the Appleton Stakes and really clearly needed one off the bench, then comes and runs a really nice race in a high-level allowance optional claimer to win last time out with Manny Franco aboard. Manny's back on. This horse has been working out beautifully over the turf as well. 48-3, 48-3, 4 furlong works on May 26th and June 3rd. There's a lot to like here. This horse is going to have to take a step up. Absolutely no doubt about it. But I think this horse does have the ability to do that. And I think this horse could hit the board underneath. This horse is versatile too, can sit a few different types of trips, can sit close to the speed, and I don't think he'll let Shea Pierre get too far away from him, and has the inside positioning that Fila de Ariana is not going to have. So Dreams of Tomorrow 12-1 would not shock me at all if this horse hits the board. I think this horse is sitting on a pretty nice race. Well, let's move to race number 6 on the card, which is the Grade 2 Brooklyn Stakes. And this is one of those rare marathon dirt races, 1.5 miles on the dirt for 4-year-old nups. And with this one, this was actually one of the easier races, I think, for me to handicap, and maybe one of my stronger opinions of the day. I really like the number 5 next in this race at 3-1 for Bill Cowens and Luan Machado. I just feel like this horse needed one off the bench last time out at Churchill Downs. This horse had been off from November until May and ran, I thought, a very respectable third place before getting a little fatigued at the end and finishing 4 lengths back. But I think this horse is going to be ready to roll now, second time out. And what I find interesting about this horse is this horse kind of fell into this division. I mean, a lot of horses do. You don't breed. I mean, nobody does breed horses anymore for marathon dirt races. And, this horse had been kind of running on the turf, running on the synthetics, sprinting at times, routing. And then all of a sudden, they kind of accidentally found out what this horse did well, it feels like. And they started sending this horse a little bit longer. And Cowens put this horse on what should have been a turf race, but it was rained off at Delaware Park, and it went on the dirt. And this horse ran a huge race and won by 18.25 lengths over Vance Scholars and Alex June, who were actually halfway decent horses, and ran a huge speed figure. Then they come back in the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance race and run a 105, again, marathoning over Keeneland at the undercard of the Breeders' Cup, and win that race over Haywood's Beach and Bal Harbor, some nice horses. Then goes to the bench, comes back, like I said, last time out, fatigues a little bit. 3-1 on the morning line. I love this horse, and this isn't even your morning line favorite, so I'll gladly use this horse. Warrant is your 5-2 morning line favorite. I think this horse, has a ceiling, whereas I think Next actually is could potentially be a really dominant horse in this division. Now, from a value standpoint, I love number 2, Red Run, 6-1. Why do I love this horse? Full sibling to Red Route 1, everybody's favorite deep closer. That's right. Red Route 1, we're going to talk about later on the card in the Belmont Stakes, but Red Run, 6-1, full sibling. And again, feels like a horse that just kind of accidentally fell into this position. And this is, stop me if you've heard this story before. Mike Maker Claimer takes this horse, starts doing something a little bit different with it, runs huge last time out, going that 1.5 miles in that same race against Warrant, and Next just missed winning that race. I think is only going to get better now that they're at this division. Keeps Tyler Gaffleone aboard in this spot. Has been working out very nicely since that race for Maker. Again, Maker stretching horses out, changing distances on horses. That's what he seems to do really, really well. So I like Red Run as a horse to use underneath. I'll probably just play a straight up 5-2 exacta in this race. And I really do like Next quite a bit in this Brooklyn Stakes. Well, let's move to what honestly gave me the most fits, perhaps, of any race on the card for a 6-horse field, and that is the Grade 1 Ogden Phipps Stakes, going a mile and a 16th for 4-year-old and up fillies and mares. Folks, this one, this gave me headaches. Anybody who watches this knows how much I love the horse Clairiere. She's one of my favorite horses running today. That said, she gives me a heart attack every time I watch her run because I never know if she's going to get there. And she ran huge in this race last year, and that was the third time off the bench. This is the third time off the bench, and she might very well run huge again today. But if you remember last year's Ogden Phipps was one of the most memorable races, I think, from last year. And that was when Search Results and Latruska went head to head for the first 7 furlongs and just set a absolutely blistering pace and opened up 15 lengths on Malathat and Clairiere. And Latruska absolutely gave way. Search Results so gamely kept on and finished a very close-up third behind Malathat and Clairiere. This year, listen, I think Search Results got a race off the bench, just like she did last year. So in the La Troyenne, she got the race off the bench and still ran, I thought, a decent race, 97 by her speed figure. I think you're going to see a progression second time out. Chad Brown runners always run better second time out, 34% hit rate, 263 ROI. You get Flavian back aboard, as he's been on this horse for a while. Won with this horse at the Molly Pitcher last year at Monmouth. But this is one I just really like because here's the thing. Played Hard, the number 5 horse, is going to go out to the lead. But Search Results and Play Hard are not going to run the same type of fractions that she had to run last year with Latruska. She's going to be able to run a much easier race, and then I think she's going to have more than enough to come for home. And I just think it's going to be a race that maybe favors horses that are a little bit more forwardly placed. Secret Oath, Clairiere sitting well behind. I think that's just a little bit more problematic. Again, this is a 1-turn mile race, and I just think it's going to favor those horses that are a little bit more forwardly placed. As a result, where did I go for my value? You know, I went to a horse that maybe I'm getting influenced by some of the folks I listen to, but honestly, you know, because I like Search Results up top, there isn't much other value in this race because I don't think Played Hard is going to be able to hold on forever in that race like she did in the La Troyenne. I think Search Results gets the better of her. And therefore, I kind of look at Past the Champagne as a horse that I do think makes a little bit of sense because I think from the rail, this horse will have to flash a little bit of speed and should be sitting behind Search Results and Play Hard, but ahead of everybody else. And as a result, she'll get the first crack at them if there's going to be a chink in the armor for Search Results and Played Hard. So she makes some sense in that regard. I feel like she's a horse that, you know, isn't going to get sucked up into the speed and may still be able to linger around, even if the favorites end up coming and passing, you know, my top pick and Search Results. She's a horse that might stick around and get a piece of the board. So I think at 8-1, she's a horse to use underneath in verticals. I know my good friend Sarah El Badwi has this as her top pick. I know David Aragona really likes this horse as his top pick as well. So, you know, some people are very, very high on Past the Champagne. I'm not quite that high, but I do see value in using her in vertical exotics. Let's head to the Woody Stevens, which kicks off the late all stakes pick 5 sequence. And this is quite a banger of a race. 13 horses in this field. There is a ton of speed, an absolute ton of speed in this race. Part of me would love to see the number 1 horse, New York Thunder, for Jorge Delgado with Ricardo Santana Jr. aboard. A part of me would love to see that horse just blitz the field because that horse has the goods in terms of speed. That horse has speed for days if it wants to go, and is a perfect 3 for 3 and has blazing early front end speed. And from the rail, I know exactly what Ricardo's going to do, which is send as hard as he can on this horse who's been working out lights out, 46-2 bullet work over 4 furlongs at Monmouth the other day. So part of me would love to see that. The problem is there's a lot of other speed in this race. Arabian Lions speed in this race. Armand, the number 5 horse, is speed in this race. Harrodsburg is speed in this race. The number 6, the number 7, Federal Judge has significant early speed in this race. You can look also to the outside to see some other horses with speed like Drew's Gold. And then there's a lot of horses that sit mid-pack. Listen, the favorite in this race is General Jim, second back from the layoff, won the Pat Day Mile. He was my top pick that day. I'm not going to go in his direction again. I think he's actually better at a mile. I think 7 furlongs, despite having won at that distance before in the Swale, it was against a horse in Super Chow, who is a 6 furlong specialist, and there wasn't much else in that field. So I wasn't necessarily that impressed by that victory at 7 furlongs in that Swale Stakes. And while he's going to come running late and there should be some pace to set into, there's so much pace that some of these horses that are traditionally on the lead are going to be sitting mid pack and should have plenty to run at as well. The horse that is second choice in the morning line, Arabian Lion, I'm not a big fan of. This horse does not win once it gets headed and once it gets beaten to the lead. This horse, under no circumstances, is going to get to the lead. This just does not have the speed to get to the lead compared to these sprinters, and is cutting back to a 7 furlong distance. So I'm going to go against Arabian Lion in this space. As a result, I'm going to the third choice on the board, which is Fort Bragg, who just lost by a neck last time out to General Jim. I think this is a horse that will sit a much better trip, a horse that is back in the Baffert barn, getting blinkers on, and I think is going to be able to sit a trip that is kind of perfect. Is going to let some of those horses I mentioned, like Harrodsburg and New York Thunder and Federal Judge, go out in front. It's going to sit right behind them and then be able to pounce. This horse has more than enough late kick and durability and stamina to go a mile and an eighth, a mile and a 16th. It has been routing before, now cutting back to that 7 furlongs. I think this horse makes a lot of sense, is going to be my top win bet. Now, the horse that I'm going to be using as value, who I view as a win contender as well, is the number 13, Drew's Gold. If he can carve out a trip from the outside, this horse has done nothing wrong. Stepping up in class, no doubt about it, but has won all 4 of his career races by a combined 14 lengths. And while he's trying 7 furlongs for the first time, if you've watched this horse run, he gets stronger and stronger the later in the race. I mean, he strides out on these fields. Second back from a little bit of a layoff, you'd expect this James Chapman horse with Jose Gomez aboard to continue to run well. Yes, it's going to be tough, and no doubt about it. But this horse does not need the lead either. He's a fast horse, but he doesn't need the lead. It's going to be a huge durability test. It's going to be a huge test, but I do think Drew's Gold is one that I'm interested in. Now, a horse that I will mention that I would be kind of potentially interested in playing in some different spots might be a horse like Fort Warren for Brittany Russell. I know this is a horse that David Aragona is pretty high on as well. This is one that won very nicely over Pimlico for Brittany, who is a really good trainer. This one's a huge price at 30-1 on the morning line. Might not be good enough to win, but I think this horse has a shot at least maybe running up and getting into the board. Again, should sit a very similar trip to the horse that I like as my top pick, Fort Bragg. All right, well, let's move to race number 9 on the card, the Jaipur Invitational. And if you thought the 40 Stevens was a tough race, this Jaipur is darn near impossible. There's a lot of really good horses in this race. 6 furlongs on the turf for 3-year-olds and up. And this is the time I think the Caravel carriage is going to turn into a pumpkin. I think the clock strikes midnight on Caravel in this race, mainly because of the number 9 horse in this race. This is the one that I think kind of messes things up a little bit. Nothing better for Jorge Duarte Jr. with Manny Franco aboard. That horse has incredible early speed and will challenge Caravel breaking from that 12 post. I just think Caravel's been able to get these really good trips, and that's no disrespect to her. She's gotten the job done. This is a very different type of a test. I'm going to go against Caravel in this type of a spot, and therefore my top pick is going to be a horse that's going to come running late and has pulled this off the last 2 years in a row, and that is Casa Creed, who is a 6-furlong turf specialist, and is coming back from running in the turf sprint overseas and finishing second to Bathrat Leon that day. But this is exactly what he did last year. Ran overseas, came back, first start off the bench, boom, wins the Jaipur Grade 1. Does it in thrilling fashion, coming from behind, beating Arrest Me Red, beating True Valor. This is a really, really great horse. I love Casa Creed for Belmont with Louis Saez aboard. I think he's going to have plenty of speed to run into in this race. I don't think he's going to be all that far off the pace either. I don't think he's going to be falling so woefully behind in this large field that he's going to have a ton of ground to make up. I think he's going to be sitting more mid-pack. I think looking at the type of trip he had in that Turf Mile, maybe, or that 4-star Dave, I should say, is kind of the trip I'd expect to see out of him here. So this is kind of where I think he's going to run pretty well. From a value standpoint, though, I do like Go Bears Go quite a bit at 12-1 on the board, on 12-1 on the morning line, number 2 horse for Wesley Ward. that is one I'm absolutely going to be using in vertical exotics. The other horse I'm going to be using in vertical exotics is my official value play, which is the number 3 Air Force Red at 12-1 for Leonard Powell with Johnny Velasquez aboard. Notable that Velasquez hops off of Go Bears Go and comes on to Air Force Red. I just like Air Force Red a lot as a horse. It's been running out in the West Coast, and I know typically West Coast horses coming east is an easy toss a lot of times, but I think this horse makes sense as an exotic, and I think this horse has run a lot of different types of distances too. This horse has been running on the downhill turf course going 6.5, has been running a mile, has the durability, has some 5 furlong sprints in that background as well. This horse just feels super consistent in a lot of ways. 5 for 13 winning in its career, has faced grade 1 company before plenty of times. I actually think 6 furlongs on a flat surface, unlike the downhill, is kind of the perfect distance for this horse. So I'm excited to see what Air Force Red has at 12-1. Should sit a trip right off of the early speed, I think, of Nothing Better and Caravelle. So should sit, I think, a really nice trip and get an early run. I know some of my friends, Gino Picola, Barry Spears, really like Dr. Zemph quite a bit at 8-1 on the board. And for Chad Brown, I don't necessarily see it with that one. I think that horse, I don't know if that horse knows what distance it wants to run yet. So it'll be interesting to see what type of trip that one ends up getting and how that horse ends up running. I think that horse might want 7 furlongs specifically, and this might be a little too short for that horse, but we'll see. Let's move on to race number 10 on the card, which is the Metropolitan Handicap, which people have, of course, called the Met Mile. And this is a tough race. This features a huge heartwarming favorite in Cody's Wish, who is one of the best stories that you're going to find in the sport, obviously, with Cody Gorman, I should say. And, you know, that young boy and his connection to the horse, really amazing. If you watch the human interest story at the Breeders' Cup, you can't help but be touched by this horse. But looking at things from a handicapping perspective, I don't see this horse as that much better than other horses in this field. And Cody's Wish is going to get bet down because of the streak that this horse is on, having won now 5 consecutive races, including 3 consecutive grade 1s, one of which was the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, just won the Churchill Downs Sprint or Churchill Downs Stakes as well, over Hoist the Golden Tejano Twist. But here's the thing. If you look at Cody's Wish's resume, yes, there's a defeat to Jackie's Warrior. But outside of that, you know, and that run in the Forego was absolutely incredible that day. I remember watching that and just being absolutely stunned by how good that horse was. But, you know, this horse along the 5-race winning streak has beaten horses like Sound Money, Zoomer, Awesome Jerry, 3 Technique, Pipeline, Tejano Twist, and Hoist the Gold. Hoist the Gold's in this race and is 30-1 on the morning line. That's the horse that finished second last time out to Cody's Wish. Now, finished second by 4 3/4 lengths, so it was well beaten, and Cody's Wish was being geared down, but still, he's not necessarily faced a huge test yet, I guess is my point. That Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile was a good field, but far be it from a great field necessarily. And, you know, the best horse in that field is probably Gunite, and he was running back on 2 weeks rest that day. So, again, I just think there's reasons to play against Cody's Wish from the inside rail. I'm willing to play against, and I'm willing to take a shot on 2 horses that have not yet reached their full potential. And a lot of people have burned a lot of money betting on these horses. The difference is you're getting a price on these horses now. Zandon is my top pick for Chad Brown and Flavian Pratt. Second back from a long layoff, ran, I thought, halfway decent second race last time out in the Westchester against Repo Rocks, going a mile. I think this 1-turn mile is what Zandon is ultimately going to be best at. I know he finished 4th in the Cigar Mile. I just think that horse needed a break. And also, quite frankly, it was a sloppy sealed track that day. And I just think, you can draw a line through that one to some extent. This horse is super honest. All the pictures I've seen of this horse too, this horse seems to just continue to be filling out, maturing, getting bigger, getting stronger. There's just a lot to like here. I like Flavian Pratt aboard this one. That's going to be my top pick in this race is Zandon, because I think he's got races in his back pocket that are good enough to win this one. I think he's got the capability. We saw that he's very good routing. He can come from off the pace. There should be a fair amount of pace in this race with a horse like Dr. Chevelle setting the pace up front. And I think you're going to see a horse like Slow Down Andy pressing the pace a little bit as well. So there's going to be horses that are going to be up and near the lead. Obviously, a horse like Repo Rocks is going to be up near the lead as well. That's where I'm going to go with my top pick. My value play in this one, and I can't believe I'm saying he's a value because he's gone off the favorite the last 4 consecutive races, is Charge It. 6-1 on the morning line for Todd Pletcher. Listen, folks, I get it if you're done with Charge It. He's burned enough people's money. I understand. You're also coming back to the track where he delivered the best performance of his career in the Grade 3 Dwyer, winning that race, which was a 1-turn mile, by 23 lengths that day. This is a horse that I think he's got talent. We know he's got talent. It's just a matter of whether or not he can put it all together. I actually like Johnny Velasquez aboard this horse. That's who he was on. Johnny was riding this horse when he won that Dwyer back in July of 2022. And that was not a bad field either. Running Son of a Gun is a nice horse that he beat that day by 23 lengths. Listen, blinkers on for the second time. I think that 1 1/8 of the Oaklawn handicap was too long. We're going to mile now, 6-1. You're getting value on this horse. I just feel like this is the horse that everybody's going to hop off of after some of these poor performances or underwhelming performances. And now this is the time he's going to hit. I think he's going to be due for a really big race. We know at his best, he is good enough to win this race. Absolutely. No doubt about it. So I'm going to try to get around Cody's Wish. I'm going to try to get around Repo Rocks in this one. And I'm going to use Zandon as Charge It as my top 2 in the Met Mile. Very contentious field. Very contentious field. Well, let's go to the Manhattan Stakes. And this is one where, listen, the New York circuit of turf marathoners, for me, it feels a lot of times when I'm handicapping these races like deja vu all over again. That it is the same horses that you see running against each other. I mean, Rock Emperor and Red Knight. And I just, how many times do I'd see these horses running against each other? Therefore, I'm always going to go with the new blood. Very similar to how I feel about the Brooklyn Stakes earlier in the card, that dirt marathon race. I tend to go toward new horses in that division rather than going with the same old horses that have been running at this level for a while. I like Up to the Mark. He's the favorite. Listen, he won for fun last time out. And I know people can say, oh, he got things his own way. You make your own luck in some of those races. And this is a horse that just has never done anything wrong on the turf. Finished 3rd in that Grade 1 Maker's Mark mile, but just barely got nosed out by Modern Games that day, who, of course, is one of the best turf horses in the world at the mile distance. And who came back to win another stakes race immediately after that, despite a horse he's passing trying to savage his jockey. Comes back, wins that turf classic at Churchill so easily. Just wins by 3.5, 3 3/4, and just blows away the field. I mean, maybe you don't think Hong Kong Harry and Spooky Channel are that great, but I mean, just did it without even being asked, really, in a lot of ways, and went from 6th to 1st with a blink of an eye. So super, super talented. I think this is one that he's my top pick. Now, there are 2 Charlie Appleby horses in this race, Ottoman Fleet and Warren Point. Warren Point was a complete handful and a complete hot mess last time out in the Man of War Stakes. Frankie Dettori had his troubles with him that day. Bad break. Horse was rank, made a middle move up to the front, and then just couldn't flattened out. Maybe second time in North America, this horse runs a little bit better. You're getting a better price at 5-1 at the very least. Ottoman Fleet, the other Charlie Appleby horse, is a nice horse who beat Tide of the Sea and City Man, who are decent enough horses, but again, not an overwhelming field in that Fort Marcy. So, again, Charles Appleby this year, he's beatable here in the United States. I feel like that's the first time we can say that in a couple of years, that the horses that he's bringing over, you can beat. Now, he's bringing over William Buick, which usually means business, and Ottoman Fleet would not shock me at all if he won. But ultimately, like I said, I'm going to go with Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz Jr. Up to the Mark will be my top pick in this one. From a value standpoint, I am going to use a horse that has kind of kicked around this division a little while, and that is Soldier Rising, only because you're getting a really good price on him, I think, at 12-1. It's a horse that I think is a really nice runner. Jose Ortiz and Christophe Clement always team up to do well. 33% during this Belmont meet, 26% over the last calendar year, those two to win together. This is a horse that just missed the wire off the bench last time out of the Man of War. You're getting a better price on him than you are on Red Knight, who's 8-1, who I think has a chance to regress a little bit. I think Soldier Rising actually makes a fair amount of sense. Second off from the bench. This horse runs well second off from the bench. Throughout his career, he's run well second off the bench. Multiple wins, a second place finish. So this horse tends to need one off the bench. Second time out as full systems go. 12-1. I'm using this horse underneath for sure in the Manhattan Stakes. All right, well, let's move to the Belmont Stakes, which some of you might have just skipped to this point in the video. And if you're just joining me now, welcome back. But the Belmont Stakes, listen, it's the third leg in the Triple Crown, grade 1, mile and a half for 3-year-olds. It's a tough race. It's a tough race for a lot of reasons because there's a lot of variables in here. There's a variable of pace. What's the pace going to look like? I think we naturally assume National Treasure is going to go out in the front end. But is a horse like Il Miracolo going to send? Is Il Miracolo going to go? Because if you look at his 2 wins, they were gate to wire, and he showed speed. If you look at all of his other races, when he's been routing against Derby horses like Forte, like Mage, down in that Florida circuit, even in the Remsen as well, when he's running those races, he sits mid-pack and further back. So I don't know what to make of Il Miracolo, and if he sends and really presses National Treasure, who knows? Tappet Shoes from the inside is going to be forwardly placed for sure. How hard he sends from that inside, I think, is a question. Does he try to challenge National Treasure, or is he happy to sit kind of in a pocket trip, sitting second or third on the inside rail and holding that position? We'll have to wait and see. But I think National Treasure's initiative is very obvious, which is get up to the front and try to take this field gate to wire. That has not been done very often. That's been done 3 times in the last 21 years, where it's been done by Deterra, it's been done by American Pharaoh, and it's been done by Justify, and that's it. I'm not willing to put National Treasure in the same category as a Pharaoh and Justify, only because I think those are superior horses. Obviously, they were Triple Crown winning horses. Yes, they were all trained by Bob Baffert, just as National Treasure is. And some could say, well, National Treasure didn't run in the Kentucky Derby. He didn't get his chance. That's because he wasn't good enough to qualify for the Kentucky Derby. He had a shot in the Santa Anita Derby, and he finished 4th. So, I like National Treasure. He was my pick in the Preakness. I made a lot of money that day on him. So it's not like I'm here bashing National Treasure. I just don't think that he's going to work that trip out on the day. The big question mark is Forte. Coming back from the 10-week layoff, obviously, the trip heard around the world when he took that misstep at Churchill Downs in the few days leading up to the race. Veterinary scratch. He tripped again on Sunday, I believe. You saw him take a misstep during morning workouts. Listen, I talked to some trainers after that race, and I said, is this a big deal or not? And they said it's hard to tell. Some of our horses, they just trip. And I've been around horses enough to know some horses just do take missteps and trip and miss a step sometimes. It's not all that dissimilar from people. Other people would say it's something to be worried about. So we don't know. And that's the bottom line is we don't know. We can speculate, we can assume, we can make inferences about things, but we don't know. And the thing that gives me pause about Forte is immediately after the veterinary scratch, Todd Pletcher said, if we can't run at the Preakness, we're going to go to Saratoga and just get ready for the Jim Dandy and the Travers. Then all of a sudden, we're going to go to the Belmont. Why would we want to go to the Belmont? Well, Mike Rapole wants to go to the Belmont. Mike Rapole wants this to be a Belmont horse. He wants to do what he did last year with Mo Donegal. He wants to win this with his horse, Forte. I have enough question marks about Forte, and he's going to be the morning line favorite. I don't want to use him as my top pick. Tappet Trice, very nice horse. He may end up proving the Tappet legacy is just unbeatable in these types of races. But ultimately, I'm going to use a horse that has absolutely 0 Tappet pedigree in him. And that is Angel of Empire as my top selection. The number 8 horse, 7-2 for Brad Cox with Flavian Prat aboard. This is a horse that has done nothing wrong. Finished 3rd in the Kentucky Derby and was coming running late. Gets the blinkers added. I don't mind that equipment change because this is a horse that's been training with blinkers. So I don't mind the addition of blinkers now. That's not necessarily a bad thing. This horse is used to the equipment on him and used to running with them. So I don't mind it in that regard. Should be a little bit closer to the pace as a result of that. I think that's a winning recipe. You need to be within about 4 lengths of the lead, I would say, typically at the Belmont Stakes. Historically over the last 20 plus years. So that's where you want to be. I think Angel of Empire can sit that trip like he did at the Arkansas Derby. I think that's the trip he's looking for, sitting mid-pack about 4 to 5 lengths off the lead and then go. And you saw what he did in that Arkansas Derby field. Might have been one of the more impressive Derby prep efforts of the entire season. And then backed it up with a huge speed figure. This horse has only gotten faster every single time out, has never regressed from a speed figure standpoint since coming back onto the dirt after running on the turf in his second career effort. So he's going to be my top pick. Pennsylvania bred. I love him. I'm a Pennsylvania bred. Justice for Smarty Jones. Revenge for Smarty Jones. I think Angel of Empire gets the win here. From a value play, I don't even know if he's going to be valued by the time morning line comes, because according to all of you on YouTube, Hit Show is going to win this by 8 lengths. I mean, everybody loves Hit Show in this race. It's so funny. It's 10-1 in the morning line for Brad Cox with Manny Franco aboard. Everybody loves Hit Show. Everybody's picking Hit Show. We did a spotlight video. Everybody in the comments, Hit Show's my pick. Hit Show's my pick. Hit Show might be even money if you guys are all betting on him the way that you're talking about it online. Listen, I like the horse. He's a good value play, I think. He makes a lot of sense. I think if there's a little bit more of an aggressive pace, both he and Angel of Empire are going to benefit from that. And I think he's a horse that, again, much like Angel of Empire, hasn't really done anything wrong. I initially was going to have Arcangelo as my value play, but there are some questions about, can Arcangelo replicate what he did in the Peter Pan? He's going 2 turns for the first time. That's another kind of intriguing element. He's only ever done 1-turn races. Now he's doing 2 turns. That's a little bit of a dynamic shift. Hit Show, I think, ran a sneaky good Kentucky Derby in that he was asked to go a little bit early and was up there near the lead as a result and near that very hot pace, and still managed to hold on for 5th. I thought Manny actually did a pretty good job jockeying him that day. I'm going to use Hit Show as my value play underneath Angel of Empire with Tapit Trice. That's going to be my top 3. Angel of Empire, Tapit Trice, Hit Show. That's where I'm going as my top 3. Wouldn't shock me if Tapit Trice won this race at all, but I'm going to go with Angel of Empire as my top pick. All right. Well, after all the excitement of the Belmont Stakes, we still have one more race on the card. And that is, of course, an $80,000 state bred race, an allowance going 1 mile and 16th on the turf for 3-year-old and up. And for this one, I'm going to go with the number 1 horse, Spirit of St. Louis, which is the favorite. And I just really like this horse. This horse is trying turf for the first time, but this is a full sibling to the turf stakes winner, Bar of Gold, who was a turf stakes winning horse and was a really cool horse that I think might be a really good indicator of what type of career Spirit of St. Louis ends up having. Because Bar of Gold, obviously another New York bred, who ran on dirt, synthetic, and turf, and ran well on all 3 surfaces. I think Spirit of St. Louis is kind of the same type of horse. I think he can run well on a lot of different types of surfaces. Gets Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount, and that last race that he came out of on the dirt, we should say, the first 2 attempts were on a sloppy sealed track where he broke his maiden with a 91 buyer speed figure, and then going 1 mile and an 1/8 in a non-winners of 1 allowance race, and finished second by about a length that day. But that race has come back pretty strong. The 3rd and 4th place horses both came back to win next time out. That race was only in April 6th, so it's been about 2 months off the bench. But that's not that long of a layoff. 5-2. I know you're not going to get much money. He's got the inside rail, but I think he's just a better horse than a horse like Let's Go Big Blue, who's coming off a really long layoff for George Weaver, is getting blinkers off, getting Lasix for the first time. Yes, there's some dynamics there, but I think George Weaver's 1 for 9 over the last 5 years in state bred allowance races on the turf. So I'm going to go someplace else, for my win. Like I said, that's why I like Spirit of St. Louis. Now, from a value standpoint, I like Spilkus. Spilkus, first of all, fantastic name. Second of all, this is just a cool horse who went out, ran in June of 2021. And that's when this horse made its debut on the turf at Parks, finished 3rd by 3/4 of a length to a nice horse actually named O'Brien, who ran in some stakes races at Parks. And, ran halfway decent, going 7.5 furlongs. Then promptly took a 1.5 years off. Went from June 21 to February 23, and came back and broke its maiden in a $25,000 maiden claimer, immediately stepped up, ran again on the dirt. I should mention that maiden claimer comes back to run an optional claimer 40 on the dirt, then comes back and gets back on the turf. And oh my, did we see a big speed figure increase on the turf at Parks May 22nd. Showed that blazing turn of foot, it seems like that 3rd time back now from that really long layoff, gets Jose Ortiz aboard now, had Paco Lopez that day, who's obviously one of the top jockeys at Parks. And I just really like this horse quite a bit. Sire by Twirling Candy, and you have a dam out of Dancili underneath. I just think this horse has the pedigree on the turf. I think this horse at 8-1 on the morning line can sit a really useful trip all right off of the speed. I think this horse has enough speed to kind of save some ground from that outside post position. And I like Spilkus. 8-1. I'm going to use this horse absolutely underneath in my vertical exotics. All right. Well, that's going to do it. We ran race 1 through race 13. It's going to be a big day. Listen, folks, if you're playing verticals, if you're playing horizontals, I wish you nothing but the best of luck. I have talked to 10 or 15 different people about this card throughout the week. And it's so funny to see the difference of opinion between so many different folks. I feel like you could go a lot of different directions. And it's been just an incredible card that was put together by the folks up at Naira. So have fun playing it this weekend. I wish you the best of luck. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us at Trust the Profits and hanging out with me on Capping the Card throughout this Triple Crown season. We're going to keep this train rolling, folks. That's not going anywhere after the Triple Crown's over. But just want to say thank you for all the outpouring of support, new subscribers, likes, comments, etc. It really means a lot to all of us here at Trust the Profits. So listen, until next time, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.